So this morning we are talking with Jessica Lam, co-founder of Kaitera. And so Jessica, can I call you Jessica?
Of
Okay.
course, of course. And may I call you David?
Yes, certainly. Now, the company is Kaitera, and your role with the company is?
Well, that's a pretty good question. I'm a co-founder, but the role really is sort of the catch-all for the other things that are not sales and R&D.
Yes, yes. Well, again, I understand in a startup, you get people have multiple roles. So you're saying everything outside of sales and R&D?
Excuse me. Pretty much. Yeah, so I would call that operations,
Okay.
inclusive of some marketing as well.
Okay. And how are things there? You're in Beijing this morning. How are things there right now?
It's sunny. The air is actually very good. And yeah, quite a normal morning, except for all the construction happening in our building at this point. So excuse the noise if you do hear some.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about a lot of things related to Kaitera, but I just wanted to first get you on the record saying, in a nutshell, what does Kaitera do?
Okay. Being mindful that everybody is kind of interested in the business model. So what we do really is we have hardware, we sell software, and we also have a data component. So we create air quality monitors for homes, for businesses, for outdoor. And the whole idea is that through that process of being able to sell these monitors, we're also able to capture data and use that data for various processes, like whatever it is with research, analysis, and creating really great forecasts and ways for people and governments and businesses to do more with that data and help people breathe better.
Okay. So
Yeah,
air quality monitoring indoors and outdoors, and collecting the data from those monitors to provide to whoever might
be needing it, right?
Yeah. Okay. So how would you describe the company's mission?
We want to put ourselves out of business, essentially, because our goal really is to fix air pollution. And one of the issues we see and we've been seeing is that, people make decisions, whether it's in the home, in the building, or even on a bigger level, city or government level, just randomly coming down with some policies or rules on how to, should I open the window? Should I close the window? These are very, home kind of based ideas, but on a bigger scale in a city, like, let's drive odd number licenses versus even number licenses. And this is something that cities like Beijing and Delhi have done before. But really, when you ask the question, does that help with air pollution? Are we doing something? And without measuring it, you can't really say definitively yes or no.
I see.
And so what we do is we provide the monitoring and the data to help people make better decisions and ultimately fix air pollution.
Okay. Why the name Kaitera?
Terra obviously means earth.
Yeah.
And for us, I think we were trying to go for something quite memorable and easy to pronounce in many different languages without ambiguity. So KAI seemed like a very easy to pronounce way, and putting that together made it sound really punchy. Yeah.
Okay. So before we delve further into the company, I just wanted to take a few minutes and understand your personal background.
Okay. Yeah, so I grew up in Vancouver, Canada. I spent my entire education in Canada, and my heritage is Chinese, Hong Kong. And I never really had any idea of moving to Asia or China at all growing up. But I always knew that I wanted to be in a huge city, a big city, and experience a lot of things. And when the time came to move to China, I said, okay, why not? And just did it because I was 25 25 at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, if I don't do it now, when would I do it? And then I made the move. And it was really interesting too, because at that time, since my heritage is from Hong Kong, we spoke Cantonese. And moving to Beijing, of all places, that's a Mandarin, right? And that's a different dialect altogether. And so I had to really start from scratch. And that was actually when Kaitera was first born. Was number one, I came to China. I'm asthmatic. I had to sort of, figure out how to live here and adjust my lifestyle, going from a super outdoorsy lifestyle with great air to a more metropolis indoor lifestyle. And then number two is I had no job. So I came to China without a job and without the language. And that's actually when Kaitera started, was because I had no job, because I was learning the language at this time. It was actually the perfect opportunity for me to explore many different things. And Kaitera was actually the product of that exploration.
So I have to ask you the question I ask every entrepreneur. Since you say you came to China and without a job, how did you eat?
Well, it was pretty lucky of me, because before then I had saved up some money. I was trained as an accountant doing audit, and that's what I did for a few years before I came to China.
Okay.
And that year was sort of just the year of living on savings.
So you did your grade school in Vancouver and high school and everything. And what about college?
Yes, also at the University of British Columbia, so also in Vancouver.
Okay. So you started Kaitera what year?
2014.
Okay. So tell me, you touched on the, again, what the company does, but tell me about the products that you're producing right now.
Oh goodness. I should.
I saw the egg.
Yeah, I actually have a product sitting around. I was wondering maybe if I should just take it and show you. Cool. So this is our enterprise product. So this is something that we launched in 18. Yeah. And it basically has a big screen. It's something that you would put on every floor and essentially help the building understand what's going on in every area so that they can better manage their HVAC system and their energy consumption. And so that's something that's very interesting, especially during this period of time, during COVID, because monitoring your air is actually directly related to particles, and particles related to the what do you call it? The transmittable COVID as well.
Yeah. So what kinds of things does it measure?
So it measures PM 2.5, TVOC. TVOC is the volatile organic compounds.
Yeah.
So chemicals and gases and stuff like that. And then you've got CO2 and humidity and temperature. With the screen on, it looks, it's too dark, actually. You can't really see it, but you're able to kind of use it like an iPad.
Yeah.
And show different graphs. And also it hooks up to a dashboard that the building managers can also take a look at and use.
Yeah.
So that would be one of our enterprise products.
Yeah.
And then we also have our home line products for people just like you and me. And we are interested in our air quality, and maybe there's a wildfire, or we live in a place with high traffic. And we also have an air purifier. So we're trying to figure out how to use the air purifier more effectively and also make sure our air is clean. So we would take the egg around and measure the air quality in the different parts of the room and figure out what we can tweak with that. So we have two product lines, one for enterprise and one for the home line. And for enterprise, we actually have a few more products as well, including a smaller version with no screen, as well as an in-wall embedded so that it's a little bit flat and it looks more like a light switch.
Mm-hmm. And so you network these products to collect data from a lot of different places. Do you draw data from all of them, or do you have some that are especially for outside or especially for inside, or how does that work?
So the short answer is yes. And the long answer is it depends. It depends on the client, it depends on the project. But in general, our products do, the whole idea is that you can look at the data that's coming out from any product and do tracking and say like, look, what's happening at 9 o'clock, what's happening at 12 o'clock, is somebody cleaning the hallway with some crazy chemical? Did a wildfire happen, and do I need to, shut off all the outdoor intakes of HVAC air? So that's actually a concern that some folks have, especially during wildfire season, is, you've got that outdoor air intake. Now, should I be taking that outdoor air at this point, right? So the idea is that you're able to track this data and answer some of those questions.
Yeah. Now, you talked about providing data for researchers, though, and governments and that sort of thing. So where are you collecting that data from?
That's kind of more in our future vision at this point. We've done a pilot project with Gangnam Seoul, one of the districts in Seoul, Gangnam style.
Yeah.
So that in that district, we've installed quite a few outdoor air quality monitors. I think it was already 2 years ago. And they wanted to do tracking and figuring out where it is coming from. And so we did a special project for that. But at this point, it's not part of our regular day-to-day operations. But ideally, with the more data that we have coming from our home line and our enterprise line products, the better in terms of our mapping that we can get. And that's probably when it gets really interesting, and providing that information for cities and states and things like that.
So you've got these home products and you've got the commercial products. So on the home side, what would your typical customer look like?
The typical customer looks like, so we call him Techie Tom, and he is,
or Corey.
Yes, somebody who is technical and really enjoys playing with technology, probably has other smart home gadgets, is health oriented or not. We've actually have a health oriented person as well. That's but Techie Tom really is somebody who's kind of engineering background, really likes to get into data. And when they're like, oh, you can export data, that's so cool. So that's him. And we've got our health conscious folk, and that might be where Corey fits in terms of really wanting to live sort of an optimized lifestyle. Whether it's from light optimization, going with the sun circles and circadian rhythm, having enough water intake and that sort of thing, optimizing your sleep, getting your workouts in. This air quality is part of that. Yeah. And so that would be our two main audiences.
Now, on the commercial side, what would the target customer look like there?
So we've got two groups.
Size or,
Yeah. And I guess just to give some background, like for us, like I said, this product, we would go into the entire building and we would install these. And basically, who would be installing them? It's the people who are helping the companies or building management firms come up with a solution. So like, okay, they have a problem, like we've got people coming back from, quarantine, or we've got wildfires happening. How do we fix this problem? So they would come up with a bunch of air purification, maybe temperature, humidity, whatever it is that their package requires. And then on top of that, they would provide air quality monitoring, which will help justify to the client, this is worth the spend, or this is worth investing in.
So with the advent of all of these people now working from home and maybe never going back to the office, are you seeing a good opportunity there for each of those people maybe to monitor their own situation, or the company being interested in monitoring their situations?
Yeah, I think even before this happened, a lot of the really great sort of companies do a lot of home wellness related things for remote workers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's completely slipped my mind which company basically gets you set up with a standing desk, gets you set up with
Mm-hmm.
all this sort of great ergonomic stuff that you would normally have at a regular office
Yeah.
at home. So I think remote work is not going away. Offices are probably also not going away, but maybe scaled back a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But health and wellness is still a big key aspect, because I think people really need to be healthy, to be productive, and to be happy. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's gonna stay. That's gonna stay.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
relative size of the opportunity, commercial versus consumer. What
Mhm.
What's the scale? What's the size of those marketplaces?
At this point, we are 60-40 in terms of revenue for enterprise versus homeline.
Hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, we'll probably end up at around 80-20.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going in more in the direction of commercial application.
Yeah. And I think actually from a data and what do you call it? Just being able to achieve our goals as having more data so that we could do more with that information,
Mm-hmm.
enterprise makes more sense.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas, I'd have to talk to 100 different people and have each of them have a laser egg in their hands, versus I can talk to one client and they would, put 100
Mm-hmm.
monitors in the development.
Hmm. How do you sell the product on each of those sides of the business? What's the sales channel?
For Homeline, it would be, we have some distributors. So these would also be folks who sell air purifiers, solutions, smart gadgets, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We also do online sales.
Hmm.
So all the big platforms.
I didn't see the laser egg on Amazon in the U.S.
Yeah, it's sold out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there have been quite a few wildfires happening in
Mm-hmm.
California, and we're out of stock. So
Wow.
I'm taking it down.
Yeah. Uh,
Uh,
and then on the selling to those commercial customers, how do you sell there?
through the solution providers that I just mentioned. So they do a lot of the hands-on work with the actual end clients.
Hmm.
And so they're the ones coming up with the package, including our monitors. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time they will be the ones directly dealing with the end clients.
Are those
So we sell to
distributors?
them. Yeah. So, sorry, I wasn't really clear. So we have end clients who are Fortune 500, folks like Microsoft,
Yeah.
Facebook,
Yeah.
right? And then they're going to ask, hey, like, look, I need a solution for this. And so they'll go find a solution provider, and they will come in with a recommendation on what to install, including a package of our monitors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what are
So
those solution providers? They're partners. They're not associated. They're not
they're
employed.
not employed, no.
Yeah.
So they're distributors.
Yeah. Okay. And then, do you have people interfacing with them to make sure that channel works well? Inside
Yeah.
people,
Do you
your
mean?
own direct sales force.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially you would have kind of like an account manager. So once you have a long-standing relationship with somebody, with a distributor, you'd have somebody to take care of them and make sure
Yeah.
they're getting all the FAQs answered and all the customer service done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're selling these in most of the major markets around the world at this point?
Yeah. Yeah, goodness. Because I'm actually not in sales, I don't know all the cool projects that we have. I was hoping that I could get all of the cool buildings, like Empire State Building's one of them. I think
Mm.
the Seattle Seahawks arena.
Mm.
Some really cool. I think even Tiffany's on Fifth, or I
Mm.
forget which one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. So the you have these relationships with the commercial customers through these solution providers, and through distribution to the commercial side or through the online sellers. But what do you do to you say you're going more in the direction of the commercial? So how are you going to go about growing that part of the business?
Yeah, I think that's actually a super cool question that I'd love to get feedback on too. But some of my ideas currently really are looking at how other companies do the real estate sort of development products, because there are so many different what do you call it, stakeholders who are involved in developing a building. So you've got the building owner, you've got the architect, you've got the engineer, you've got the the property manager, and all of these people actually do need to know of you in a way. So if you become famous to all of them, then when they recognize your products and your reputation on the list of what do you call it, specified products, then they're more likely to say, hey, like, look, yeah, let's go with them. So in terms of marketing, I think you do have to do a little bit for each of those stakeholders, including the builders as well, making sure that everybody knows who you are and that you're a stable choice.
It's that construction. That's okay.
So just wait a little bit. I think it's a momentary.
And so I noticed on your website that you provide a lot of information. You do some education. You've got business solutions. You've got Air Academy, that sort of thing. So those things kind of fall in line with relationship building and customer relationship management, if you will. So I see those kinds of things. Are there other things that you do to make yourself stick with these customers, to make yourself indispensable with the customers you're serving?
Okay. I think that's we're still learning. I think thinking back to 2015 when the laser eye came out, it's actually really interesting. We the very first product we ever made was an air purifier, but we never talk about it anymore. And the reason why we made it is just because I needed one. And then afterwards, I started delivering them to clients, and I would just ride my little scooter, have the air purifier on the back of the scooter. That's actually how I got to know the city really well. And I basically was able to install them and show them on a monitor what the situation was in their home. And that's when the laser egg idea came from. It's the fact that so much more education was being able to be had with something that could tell you, okay, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And because of the hands-on customer relationship that we had from the very beginning, we tweaked the laser egg to a product that we knew that we could sell. Mm-hmm. And as time went on, and the distance between the client and us grew, and the more clients that we had and the more distributed they were, it was actually much harder to figure out who they were and what their pain points were and what we should be coming up with next, or how we can make them happier. Yeah. And so I think at the end of the day, like your first question of who are your target audiences and what do they care about, that was actually one of the toughest questions that we had to answer in terms of trying to call people up and get surveys and figure out what actually is an important feature and what isn't. And so we're still, for the home line, I think we're quite clear on that. And it is making sure that we've got really great data, granular. People can have flexibility in using that data for, whether or not they want to automate for different things, and good service. And I think those are the main key areas. And for the enterprise side, because it's a very what the clients are looking for are usually for high-end situations. So people who are in a competitive marketplace, like for example, if Microsoft wants the best talent, they're going to look for, you know, the best wellness program or the best whatever. And companies across the board kind of at that caliber will also be trying to have the entire package. So when you're looking at what you can provide them, of course, it's number one, really good service, right? Number one, really good quality and reliability. So these three things, I think, are what keep people saying, "Hey, like, look, this is worth it. This is good. Let's keep coming back."
Yeah. So let's say I'm Satya Nadella at Microsoft, and you know, I've got this whole campus of buildings that I'm putting this Kaitera product in. What is one of those boxes you just showed me? What does that cost? The commercial product you just showed me.
I guess it depends on if you buy one or
Well,
a
just
thousand.
we'll say the quantity one price.
Okay, it's around 1,400.
Okay, and so then if I'm putting these on campus, I may need hundreds of these things, right? So it could be at a place like Microsoft. It could be, I guess it could be a $100,000, $200,000 purchase.
It could be depending on what they want to do, and I actually because there's just so this is actually another interesting thing about the enterprise line. So what we've realized is, you know, okay, so this is really cool, right? You've got a screen, it looks sleek, the design looks great, and also it has modular function. So when you do maintenance, you don't have to take the whole device off the wall. You just have to put in a cartridge like you would in a printer. And so this is super different from a lot of the other products that are
for
out
the
in the
detection.
market.
Okay. So, but I guess what I'm getting at is I'm going to spend a few $100,000 on this Kaitera product line, and I'm the person that's responsible for managing this building and everything. How do I justify that to my boss? I'm not Satya Nadella. I'm the building manager.
Yeah.
How do I justify to my boss this purchase?
Right. So actually, I guess I was going to kind of go and say, like, that's why our first product was this one.
Yeah.
And we realized, hey, like, look, price point wise, maybe it's a little bit high. They wanted something that doesn't have a screen or, you know, is more sleek and is less intrusive. So we came up with a few more ways to kind of service them with the different mix of pricing. So that's number one.
Yeah.
Number two is, how do you justify? Right now, actually, it's kind of like I mentioned before. If you wanted to be, you know, on the top employer list, you generally will have a LEED certified building, and you'd have a lot of these wellness certifications to just to be able to justify to your staff that you're doing everything that you can to create the best space possible. And for us, actually, our method of getting these certifications is a cheaper method than doing ticking some of the other boxes. So actually, in a way, if they were to just add air quality monitor, yes, it might be 100,000 or whatever, but it is cheaper than some of the alternatives that they would have to do in order to meet those requirements. And so number one would be certification, brand, you know, for, you know, if they want to build that brand that they have and sustain that brand, they would want to have the certification. And then number two would be cost. So running the building, if you are able to say, hey, like, look, you know, it's really good indoors. Let's not do any more let's not do any more outdoor air intake, or, let's run the different building differently. It's actually a huge impact on energy. And the running a building, 40% of the costs come from HVAC, maintenance and stuff like that, using HVAC system. And so if you're able to say, like, look, I can turn it off when it's not necessary more often, then you're able to sort of see energy savings and cost savings there.
Okay. So there's a justification that relates to being able to achieve these certifications and protecting your brand and being able to recruit and retain the kind of employees that you want. And then there's a even more nuts and bolts justification in terms of the amount of money you could possibly save on your HVAC operations.
And I think if you were to say which one's more important, brand is more important. Yeah. But then that's kind of one of the driving reasons for people to do this, is because of brand. Energy savings is the next wave of basically companies that are trying to put in much more sustainable solutions and being a leader in that area as well. But I think, why do people make sustainable choices? Also because of brand.
Again, looking at you mentioned that right now it's like 60-40 commercial versus the consumer product. And you also mentioned that, so those would be the revenue streams, right? The sale of the products to those marketplaces. You mentioned data operation as well. Does that figure into the revenue picture yet?
I'm trying to think of what projects we have at this point. So I don't know. It's kind of like when you have an app and you have a smart product. You have the basic usage of the app, and then you want to unlock some extra functions like reporting or whatever, automation, something like that. We're thinking about potentially having something that could be a freemium model in terms of data. But at this point, right now, we don't have that yet.
So that doesn't figure large into the revenue picture right now, the data operation.
No.
So if we go to what do you guys do every day? I'm always, again, as a founder myself, I tend to think of what are we doing? What are we spending our time and activity on in order to deliver on our mission? So what would you say the main activity areas at Kaitera are right now?
For me, or for Kaitera?
Just for Kaitera in general. Yeah, for the team.
So our company is, like, where do we deliver value? It's through our tech. So a large amount of our effort is on R&D and on manufacturing. And so for without these two, like, essentially we have no business, right? So that's where we spend most of our time and effort.
So R&D is part of the company.
Yes.
And the manufacturing is also part of the company.
Manufacturing is like third party outsourced, but we are super involved in the whole process of that.
Okay. And then you mentioned sales and marketing.
Yeah.
Consuming a fair amount of time. And you mentioned operations. Operations
is just the term that I think kind of what logistics and warehousing and all that other part of supply chain also fall under.
Okay. And so what would you say, again, looking at Kaitera, first of all, tell me about the team. How many people work for Kaitera? Or if you don't feel comfortable saying how many people actually work for Kaitera, you just, what are the roles there that you all have to cover?
Oh, no worries. I mean, at this point, we're around 30 people-ish. Actually, what's funny is that during the COVID situation and we all had to work remotely, it was really great timing because actually we have about 10 or so folks who are outside of just like scattered around, you know, Europe, US, Canada, Poland, just everywhere.
Yeah.
And we were already turning towards remote work and doing everything through Zoom and doing everything kind of where we had online team building.
Wow.
Even. So it was actually a really good time to sort of try out, stress test our remote kind of plan. And yeah, anyway, that's a sidebar.
Yeah.
We were asking about how the team was, like, what's the structure like? So you've got marketing, and we have a team that's in the US and in Canada doing global marketing. So all of our, like, pretty much all the material comes from that team in terms of what you see. So the website, the packaging, the copy, the strategy, and then it gets localized to whichever market and whichever distributor needs more support. So we would take that and we would translate it into Polish, Russian, Korean, whatever.
So what would you say are the really key resources for Kaitera right now? You mentioned your tech team. Tech is a really key resource. What else?
Key resource. Cash.
Well, yeah.
It's so in a manufacturing situation, I don't know what other companies you're interviewing, but in manufacturing, it's to make a batch, you have to put a lot of money in. And then when you make the money, it takes a long time to make that money back. If you're good at maintaining, sort of doing your forecast on how many to produce and how many to sell, and you can make that window nice and tight, then your cash flow is pretty good. But otherwise, that's kind of where it's pretty dangerous if you make too many and can't sell them. So we haven't run into that problem.
What I'm getting at is, what do you feel you guys are really good at? What are you uniquely good at?
The, what do you call that? Core competencies.
There you go.
Using some terminology, I don't know. It would be the R&D. It would be the speed to which we are able to reflect our clients' needs, I think. And even though I say we're not as in touch with our clients as we once were, you know, when we were installing things in their house directly, I still think that even today, 6 years later, we really care about all their complaints. So whenever they have a complaint, we'll be like, okay, what actually do you need to do? And is there any way that we can make it work for you? Because in our industry, it's not like you're selling to hundreds of or thousands of different people. You're really, you know, servicing a handful. Like, everybody knows everybody if you show up at the party. So you really want to make sure that you're giving good service. And I think that's what we are able to do.
Okay. And what partnerships do you need to make this thing work?
Can you rephrase that question? I don't really.
Well, in terms of who are those business entities out there that are outside of your company that cooperate with you to help you achieve your mission?
For the enterprise side, it would be all the folks that I mentioned before, the stakeholders. So it would go from the property developer to the architect, to the engineering firm, to the builders, and then, of course, to the service providers and the system integrators. And I'm using all these terms, and maybe like I can probably even send you a wiki article on who all is involved. But these folks all touch a point within the building development process, and being able to have them know who we are and recommend us. And when they see our products in our name come up on the materials list or whatever in the proposal, they will say, okay, like I trust these guys, I know them, I've worked with them before. I think that's actually one of the most valuable things, because if you think of the folks who are in building management, there's a handful that you can think of off the top of your head, and they are global. So if you work with folks in the US and you end up talking to somebody in Singapore or Hong Kong or London, it's the same company, right? Just showing up in multiple different locations.
And what
Does that answer your question? I feel like sometimes my brain works in a very, web-like fashion. So sometimes I don't know if
it'll all come together. So one of you mentioned, you have third-party manufacturers, right? I would consider them a partner, right? Because they're and
yes.
Use more than one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And any other partners like that you can think of?
Like vendors are folks basically who are helping you with PR, helping you with certain aspects of marketing, pretty much anything that you want to do but don't have the ability to hire in-house or want to have something for long term, then you would just sort of outsource. And that could be done for all sorts. Like we've done that for design quite a lot, actually, at the very beginning, and to great effect, actually. One of the things that I really enjoy about working with third party is finding the folks who you would almost like want to be in your company, right? Like they have their same values, they understand your mission, they know what you're talking about, what you want to achieve and how you want to portray yourself. And they're able to just kind of internalize that and deliver. And talking to them is such a pleasure. And sorry.
No, it's all right. No, I understand. So I just want to double back on something. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'm fascinated a little bit by the business and by your story. So you were carrying this air purifier around on your back on your motorcycle and selling these things. So your background is financial. You're not an engineer yourself, right? And you had asthma and you had a desire to have this product and you saw a need there because you had the need. But how did you go about getting those first units manufactured or even designed?
Our very first laser rig was a product that I still think of it like our first baby in a way, because from concept to prototype to trial production and mass production, that whole process was something that we had never experienced before. When we made the laser egg the very first time, we said, okay, it needs to have a screen and it needs to fit in your hand and it needs to look good. Okay, so that was like how we came up with that idea. Because people needed to see the numbers and people needed to hold it around, take it around.
Yeah.
And so it had to have, and then from there, you started to get all the requirements. And we had no idea what we were doing. We didn't even know where to begin in terms of, actually when you make hardware, you need to have obviously the outside design. So that's the first thing that we did. We're like, okay, let's do the outside design, because that's, as a consumer, you see that first.
Yeah. Like industrial design.
Yes, industrial design. And then you're like, okay, now what now? You've got the hardware, right? So you find a hardware engineer, and he's like, okay, well, how is the inside made? That's the structural engineering that needs to be done on a piece of hardware.
Yeah.
And so these are all things that we actually ended up learning through, trial and error and asking other people and talking to the engineers who were more, experienced.
Hmm.
And actually we learned a lot from the factories, right? They would say, okay, like this is what we're, looking to make. How would you, recommend that we do this? What type of finishing, what type of tooling and all that. And it was definitely just by trial and error.
Yeah. So in terms of the design, do you have proprietary IP or any patents covering the designs?
Yeah. But I mean, you can have all the patents in the world if you don't have a good business model and if you don't have the execution.
Hmm. Yeah. Or the money to defend the patent if you get challenged.
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of those things where, like, so what,
Yeah.
you just have to run faster.
Yeah.
And you can say so that's kind of where I thought, this is actually definitely more of a game than it is. It's just like an insurance. It's nice to have, but you really need to play the game.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I didn't ask you this before. We talked about the revenue sources, the commercial products, the consumer products. What would you say if you were to categorize the main costs? Obviously you're manufacturing a product, but how would you? What are the key costs that go into your operation?
The operations or the product?
Just so if you were just thinking about your income statement, what would be the main components there?
Your salaries.
Yeah.
And of course, then you would look at kind of the cost of your manufacturing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got component parts, you've got assembly, and you've got fixed costs in terms of your each manufacturing. So you've got your tooling. So tooling is you've got a mold. So if you're making, I don't know, a bottle, right? You would make a mold. It would be this giant metal thing, and then they would inject plastic into it. And there'd be a number of times in which you can inject plastic and the thing would come out like you expect. And so that would be a fixed cost that you would have to have for every new product that you make.
Yeah.
And what else is there? Let's see. Warehousing is actually also, and logistics. So making sure that you're taking all of your product and putting into your warehouses globally, making sure that that's done on time. Because actually it's not just what it costs, but it's also the opportunity cost of not having product in your warehouse, because especially right now we're sold out. And so we could be selling more, but now, if you haven't planned well enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think anybody planned well enough for this pandemic situation.
Well, this is a good wake-up call as well, and a good opportunity for a lot of people to revisit, some of those emergency procedures.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to be respectful of your time. I just have a few more questions.
Okay.
And so let's see. What aspects of your business model would you say you'd like to improve at this point?
I don't know, actually. I think we're in a very sweet spot at this point, getting towards enterprise being 80%, homeline being 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And on that transition, or on that road, I think we can do a lot more in terms of how we improve our product offerings and how we improve what we're able to deliver to those solution providers. And right now, if you were to ask me, okay, like, if you could wave a magic wand and change something about the business, what would I like to see different? I would like to see marketing in terms of to the enterprise stakeholders being improved, and sort of like if you were to say, hey, like, oh, do you know any folks with this specific thing, every single person, no matter who, would say, you know what, Kaitera is the best. And I think that's kind of, we're on the road to that. And I'd like to, yeah, if I could change that today, that would be something I would change.
And where are you trying to get in terms of this whole data as a product part of the business? Where would you like to be there?
From personally, I'm actually super curious. Like, I want to know if I could live in a space and work in a space and it's automatically controlled for every single parameter, whether it's humidity, temperature, PM, or fresh air, chemical exposure, etc. That would be great, because number one, I don't want to think about anything, and number two, I do want to live in a great space. For me, the data, if we can achieve that with the data that we're getting, and over the long term we can provide that level, that would be what I would be very happy with on an indoor front.
Yeah.
On an outdoor front, I actually do see air quality information being just like anything else that you would search up on the Weather Channel. And if people get fluent and if they really understand what air quality is, then more can be done just in terms of awareness of how they're interacting with their environment on a larger scale. It's not just me in my home, it's now me in my community, me in my city, me in my state, me in my country. And being able to sort of see that impact. And that's kind of why we have Air Academy. That's also why we have some of these more educational focused elements, because one thing that we're hoping to do is educate people so that they can change the way that they're thinking about their environment.
Well, you mentioned the Weather Channel, and one thing that they have done, and there was an outfit that used to be called Weather Underground. I think they might have been purchased by the Weather Channel, but they had these weather stations, little weather stations they sell to people. And so you could get better information from Weather Underground than you could get from, the national, the National Weather Service, because they had these measurement points in every community, right? And I thought that's where you were talking about going with this data operation in Kaitera, to provide that kind of capability for air quality.
Yeah, I think there is an opportunity for that. There is an opportunity for that. And that is something that I think you might be seeing in the future, is people who are not just thinking about themselves, but also thinking about their community. And these are the techie toms that I'm talking about. These are actually more retirees. So folks who have been engineers their whole life, and they're now really interested in those are the folks actually who are doing the Weather Underground outdoor weather stations, 60 plus.
Yeah.
And yeah, that could be the same for air quality.
So what businesses or services would you regard as competitive with what you're doing? Competitors or substitutes, or?
There are, let's see, folks who have air quality monitoring for buildings, for sure. And so if you search up air quality monitor for buildings, and if you search up air quality monitor for homes, those would be generally our key target competitors. Yeah. But in the way, none of what, at least from what I can see, none of them have the mission that we do in terms of being wholly integrated in terms of home, business, indoor, outdoor, and data, and with actually the mission of fixing air pollution and providing solutions on a more holistic scale, including the education component. So I think for us, our mission is very different, and what we want to achieve is very different. So it ends up that our products actually also end up being different. Yeah.
Well, looking at one specific competitor, I'm aware of this outfit called Aware, AWAIR. You familiar with them?
Yeah.
How would you position your product against theirs, or how would you rate what you're doing on the that's a consumer product, I'm assuming, but how would you
one of the for consumer product, so this is the one thing that I think is actually most important is the original intent of the laser egg, which is you have a screen and you're able to take it around, and you can take it around because it's battery powered. And you're able to go into every nook and cranny and find, where the leaks are happening. So in a place that's polluted, you might actually realize that there's holes and things coming from your windows and doors. And that's actually really important for people who are using this product. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why people choose the laser egg, is because of the screen. I mean, I know my friend's granny, who's 90 something, uses the laser egg because she can turn it on. It's huge numbers, and she knows just from the colors what that means. And I think when you make a product that is user friendly and for your audience, that's why they choose it. Some folks might choose other products for other reasons, but one of the things that I've realized is not to try and satisfy everybody.
Yeah. So what kind of government or regulatory issues do you all have to deal with what you're doing? Does that ever come up against any regulations or standards?
I think we're just under regular electronics category. So there isn't anything different necessarily from.
You mentioned these building certifications, or like LEED certification.
Right.
And
right.
is that an international thing, or is that country by country?
So LEED certifications are basically they're a type of building certification.
Yeah.
And generally they would want to have monitoring that is certified. So we have certifications that are reset certified for our monitors and things like that, that fit the bill for what they need.
And how do you determine how you mentioned that the sensors in here are in your product, in your commercial product, are replaceable? How often do you have to replace those?
That's actually a really good question. In general, I think around a year or two, depending on how often it's run. Of course, it's always dependent on how often it's run and what kind of environment it's being installed in.
So I just have two more questions.
Okay.
One is, if everything goes the way that you want it to go with Kaitera over the next several years, what will it look like, 5-10 years from now?
We would have made a difference in terms of how buildings operate. We would have saved companies money, and then also have improved energy consumption even on a city level, as many buildings start to become more energy efficient and the standard becomes the norm. If you walk down, the hallway and you ask, hey, it's not just what's the weather like, oh, the air is pretty good today, or, let's go for, an extra run or something, because people are more aware of that. Awareness is something that we want to have impacted. It's actually really interesting. Something that we've always talked about is how do we measure our impact? And it's always kind of like, okay, can we do something around lives improved, and finding the numbers to do that? And that's something that we're still looking for, is to try and measure, you know, if we have these many data points and if people are aware and they change their behavior, right, then does that mean that their lives are improved, that they've improved the lives of those around them? Like, how do we measure that? And I think it would be really cool to see something like that, because we do want to have a large impact.
Okay. So
I don't know if that answers your question.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm thinking in terms of community impact, customer impact, and I think you address both of those.
Yeah, because I think at the end of the day, we want people to say, hey, like, look, you know, Kaitera has contributed to improving the lives of people. And it's not just, you know, oh, we made a monitor. Not at all, you know. Yeah.
So I don't want to end on a down note, but what is your biggest concern at this time relative to the business?
Concern.
Is there anything that, you know, keeps you up at night?
Well, actually, what's interesting is, in terms of the business, no, not really, mainly because I know where we need to go and what we need to do. And actually that clarity has never been even more so, because over the past few months, the focus has been just much more laser because of COVID and having to react quickly and to assess every day what the situation is. And so in terms of the business, I know what we have to do in terms of what products we have to make, you know, how we need to grow, what areas to target. But the question is like, okay, how can I maintain my balance while doing this? And that actually is a huge concern, right? Like you're running a marathon and not a sprint. So making sure that I have enough energy, and the people around me, that's actually one of the biggest things, is the team itself. How do I make sure that everybody feels safe, everybody feels the energy, you know, to move forward and to keep going? I think that for me is actually something that I think about.
So this may be, and this is an extra question, it may be a silly one. I noticed you even alluded to this on your website, but is there some way for this kind of a air quality monitor to monitor for viruses?
I think there's a webinar which I can recommend that we have, and Liam, he speaks specifically about the relationship between viruses and air quality, as well as temperature and humidity, and what we can do about that. I can't speak about it in much depth, but I think if we can control our exposure, if we can control our environment better, the outcome, of course, is going to be improved in terms of transmission.
I think I read that web article before getting on the call, and what I drew from it was that if you control the air quality, if you do the purification, it's not a cure, but it improves the overall air quality and you know, could lead to better outcomes in general. Yeah. But in terms of a detector that says, you know, beep, 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 there's viruses in this room, I haven't seen anything on that level.
Yeah, and it's sure it should be coming soon.
That would be great if it was. So Jessica, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, especially 8 o'clock in the morning over there.
That's all right. I'm up pretty early.
Well, I'm sure the students are going to get a kick out of hearing about Kaitera and being able to go to the website also and see what you're doing and to hear from you directly. So I really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
once they pull together their business model, I will send it to you, and you'll have that um, as an item you can take with you.
Oh, thank you.